really heavily focused on how can we provide better quality, better support, better everything to the developer community, and we're constantly focused on that. And one of our part is we want to hear from you. And that helps us to guide what is important, what we need to help deliver to you. And our development team is very focused on helping people become, to enhance the product to help developers, but there's a lot of other elements around that, training and support and our websites and documentation, and that's the team is very focused on it. So help us help you in terms of take the time and put your questions that you have into the GoToWebinar control panel. And remember, at any time you can actually send us questions beforehand to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com. And what that allows us to do is prepare for these and be better prepared. Now, this is somewhat of a very cool topic, a technology that we feel strongly that is going to go a long way towards helping our developers be more productive, deliver more results, and produce more value for themselves and their end clients. And so our topic today is going to be, and I got to go down all of my slides, I got to start breaking my slides together, AlphaLaunch. Now this is an introduction to AlphaLaunch. We're just going to kind of touch on it, explain what it is, kind of explain how it works, because we have coming up at the Alpha DevCon 2017 a full-blown training around this. So actually what's really exciting is we've got two tracks. The first day, as we've talked about before, is on building with Alpha software, Alpha Anywhere, mobile development, and we've got a completely revamped and enhanced class that includes a lot of new capabilities, a lot of great stuff, and a little bit more complicated, or I'd say advanced topics that are involved with it. So you get a more realistic, advanced mobile product or mobile solution out of our training there. And it's coming along really great. We're very excited what it looks like, what it's going to deliver, and we feel strongly that when people go through this class, they're going to walk out feeling very comfortable moving forward on developing those apps. Now, along with that, we have my esteemed colleague, Chris, who's going to be focusing on developing and debugging with PhoneGap. For people who are already familiar with the development system, they're going to be able to go in and learn more how to use PhoneGap more extensively, and also more importantly how to debug apps that have been generated with PhoneGap and Alpha. And you're going to really find that this is, if you're a little bit more advanced, you're going to get a huge amount of it. Now the next day, we've got another topic. Next day is all about deploying. And we're going to focus on two topics. One's called AlphaLaunch, the other is Alpha Cloud. And these are newer technologies that have been launched this year. AlphaLaunch in the last about 2 releases ago. It's been enhanced significantly in the last release, and it continues to improve. And along with that is Alpha Cloud that is really going into production release now. We have a number of customers very interested in getting there because of all the benefits that go with it. So this is your opportunity. So what I want to do today is kind of talk about the AlphaLaunch, and in a very near future one, we're also going to be doing a certification program on AlphaLaunch where we'll go into more details on how to actually deploy using AlphaLaunch. That's coming up, and if you're interested on that, either just put a comment in the question mark box there, and Dave will be monitoring that, or go ahead and email us directly at guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll get all that information for you. So with that in mind, we want to talk about AlphaLaunch. So a little bit of background. And let me do a process check. Am I coming through loud and clear, Dave, in terms of that?
Yep, everything is A-okay.
Oh, real quick, I would be remiss to say is that we're filling up very fast at both the pre-conference training and the conference itself. There's been an incredible uptake of excitement about it. And so if you're interested, get over to alphasoftware.com, DevCon 2017, and that's going to, and then if you just go to our main page, there's a link there, and in there you can sign up for the training and also register for the overall event that is going to be taking place at DevCon. So if you haven't taken the time to do it, get in there and get it going, get on there, get involved, and you're going to not regret it. We have an enormously great set of things to go over. Okay, so AlphaLaunch, very exciting. One of the key things we want to do is accelerate the time it takes to, or really, accelerate, or rather reduce the amount of time it takes from concept to delivery. I have an idea for an app. I want to build that app. I want to deploy it, and I want I want to get feedback. I want to use people to teach me what they want out of my app. And it really comes from like a lean product philosophy. I don't know if you've read up on lean startups. It's all about getting that minimal piece out there into the hands of your users so they can give you that real information versus you kind of trying to create this Taj Mahal and then put it all out there. And so we really focused on, well, what are the steps it takes to go from concept to delivery? Now, Alpha spent years on the concept to build, meaning that if I had a concept and I wanted to build it, I use the Alpha development tools and I can do so. So in the early days with desktop, if I had a desktop app I wanted to create, I could literally open it up, create a new database, and have it running in a very short period of time. And then also, how could I take an existing database and put a user interface on that? Kind of in the 90s, Alpha accelerated that experience with really powerful controls such as the grid control, where literally with a series of 10 points and clicks, you can have a fully editable grid up and running and you're good to go. Now, and then we've transported that same philosophy to creating a web app. How fast can we get that web app up and put it on the web? And now with mobile. Now, a part of mobile is that we made a conscious decision that when you decide to deploy on mobile, because of the fact we're going to need to interface with the hardware for both Android and iOS, we chose PhoneGap as our sort of go-to vehicle for going out in the field. And we've made it very easy to do so, meaning that it's as simple as create and send it through PhoneGap. But there are a few more steps, and especially when you want to start doing things like actually put in certificates and other pieces so that people can download it on their iOS machines, etc. There's more logistics with that. And again, it's not huge, but there's more steps involved with it. And we're always focused on how can we reduce the number of things you need to do as a developer to achieve your end goal, which is getting your app in the hands of the person and them achieving value out of that app. So AlphaLaunch was born out of that. And we use it actually internally as a demonstration tool, but AlphaLaunch is very, very cool. And in fact, let me go ahead and just do this. Let me, just for people who haven't played with it, let's go ahead and go to AirPlay. I'm setting it up real quick. Bear with me. There we go. If you go to, and I'm going to show you on a Apple iOS device, but I'll also show you in a few minutes on a Android device. If you go into the App Store or the Google Play Store, you do a search and search for AlphaLaunch, you will see that we have in the store something called AlphaLaunch, and it has the little inspection solutions. And this is a product that is in the store, so it's been officially blessed by Apple and Google, and they're in the stores. You can download it directly to your machine, and it installs. It's got all the security components, everything else from the standpoint of iOS. It's going to say, great, go ahead, you can install it. It's up to you. Now, what is AlphaLaunch? Well, we're using it as a demonstration vehicle, meaning that we have a bunch of preset demonstrations that are available within the app that you can run to kind of see what Alpha can do. But what it is a native shell application, meaning that it is essentially a shell app that can be loaded onto either an Android or an iOS device. It is a full PhoneGap app, and so therefore it has access to the mobile device file system. It has access to the hardware through a specific set of plugins, and at this point it uses the Alpha branding. It's very minimal, but we still use our brand. We'll talk about that. But most importantly is it provides you a fast and easy way to get your app in the hands of the end users. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the different ways you can do that there. So the idea behind it is that, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to get my app out there. Well, I can use the Apple iOS store and the Google Play Store to do so. Now, how does this work? Basically, the individual downloads the AlphaLaunch product to their device, so they install that on there. Once they're installed on that, they can then enter in, and we'll show you some cool things you can do, a URL to talk to an Alpha server, and the Alpha server will then download a app inside the shell so it can be run within that. And so therefore what happens is that you can load one or many apps on your server and then allow them to download them on there. And once they're downloaded, then the system will talk back through Alpha to the development system, to the databases. Everything else works just the same, meaning that once you've compiled, and I'll kind of show you the process in a few minutes, once you have put your app up on your server, then it downloads inside the shell, and from then on, it goes through and connects to it. Now, what's kind of cool, and we'll talk about it, is that the server that is downloading the AlphaLaunch doesn't actually have to be the same machine. In fact, we support Amazon S3, which allows you to put it up on S3, so when the user downloads the app, it comes from S3. But then when you talk back to the back-end systems, let's say you were getting a set of databases, or querying a set of databases in lists, etc., it's going to go through that same server and then talk to the dev system, so everything else. And that's the cool thing, is that once you kind of have this set up, everything else is plain vanilla alpha development and how you do your apps. And the speed at which it generates is enormous because you get a lot of steps. Now, let me show the different ways you can go out there. So one method right now, which has been available until AlphaLaunch came out, is that you use the development system to develop your app. Then what you do is you go through the PhoneGap build process, you build that app, and then that app then needs to be placed into the store, and then the user downloads it to the store. Or they download it with the security provision that it's okay, or they go through, say a mobile device management solution like a Perion or something like that. But as you can see, there's a step where you have to rebuild the app, put it up there, and bring it down. Now with the AlphaLaunch, and then once it's down, then it starts talking to the Alpha App Server, and off to the races there. What we do now is that when you are ready to deploy, we get rid of that whole PhoneGap step, meaning that you build your app, you deploy it to the Alpha App Server with AlphaLaunch, and that's already built into the App Server, so there's no separate thing. And then the user, all they have to do is download the AlphaLaunch app from the store, query the server, and download their app, and they're off to the races. And everything else works the same, which is very, very handy there. So the benefit is now, each time you want to update your app, you don't necessarily have to go through a whole develop, push to the store, push out to the field. Now you can have living apps that can do it. And I find this is very valuable for a couple different areas. One is for a company that really doesn't want to spend the time and they just want to start getting their apps out in the hands of their people. They don't have to go through PhoneGap and all those pieces. They can actually literally use AlphaLaunch and be able to start using it. It's also super helpful in the prototyping and testing phase. So you may have every intention in the world to create a custom app for this, and you can do so at any time from that standpoint. But if you are interested in saying, hey, I want to spin up this app, give them a test, but not have to go through all this rigmarole, you can simply have the person download the AlphaLaunch executable or AlphaLaunch app on the phone, and then send them a QR code, and boom, they can download it and start using it. So we're finding that more and more people are starting to use AlphaLaunch as a tool in which they can accelerate prototyping and testing, because they can push to the server. Next time the person needs an update, all they do is push it to the server, the person on the system refreshes it, and now they have the new version, and then they're off to the races. So it cuts out steps, it makes it simpler and faster to get it into the hands of the users. So it's something very interesting to explore from that standpoint. And we'll talk, so it kind of works like this, is that if you think about it, just kind of from a structural, is that you have your mobile device using iOS or Android. Then you have the AlphaLaunch application that you download from the store. You install that once, and then you can have one or more. In fact, you could have as many ones of these as you want on here running on top of that, and allow you yourself to have all these different apps run on top of it. And even though it says an AlphaLaunch app, it's really just an Alpha mobile application, from that standpoint. And all the features and capabilities you're used to do it. Now, the cool thing is that since we have an installed app, you get access to the file system. That means that you can capture offline imagery, video imagery, and things like that. You can also do things along the lines of accessing the file system. So if you want to download and put in some SQLite databases, have a bunch of data there. Also with our new ability for list controls to store their data to the file system versus local storage, that's also available. And really cool is that we have access to the hardware. So we've already built in a series of PhoneGap plugins into the AlphaLaunch. So you can do things such as image capture, You can use it to read barcodes. You can do notifications. You can do you can also do things like what's another one that was called? Oh, barcode scanning, things like that. So there's a very rich level, and as we continue to mature this, we'll continue to add core functionality to AlphaLaunch so that you're going to be able to access more and more of the hardware, you know, the location capability and stuff like that. You don't have to worry about building and putting all that together. We've done it for you. I'll show you in a few minutes that you just have to publish it in a certain way. Okay. So with that in mind, what I want to do is show you a few screens, just kind of give you an idea of the process on it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to pop open and I'm going to go ahead and go back into my phone. You'll see it in a moment here. I've already downloaded AlphaLaunch, so I'm going to go ahead and open up AlphaLaunch. So that is a native app that's loading on my system. Now you'll notice that I already have a set of apps already installed in here. Some are standard sample apps that came from our demo server, which actually installed. And then another one I did recently is a demonstration kind of scenario. And these apps can be then managed. So we have all these apps that are in there. It's got descriptions about each app. You can add your own icons. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do. And I can go in here and edit and delete, add, etc. within here. And so therefore, what's nice is I don't have to have just one app. I could have a whole series of apps that are available in here from that standpoint. Now, very important is that how AlphaLaunch works is that the app calls back to our Alpha app server to look for any AlphaLaunch application. So when you deploy your app to the AlphaLaunch server, it basically packages up, puts together some extra files and puts it up on the server. So that way, if a AlphaLaunch client calls, it can get a list of what apps are available on this server and download them appropriately. They know what they're at. And that's what the AlphaLaunch publishing process does. And you can control that from standpoint. Now, the other thing that's important is when you go into AlphaLaunch, you need to tell it where this server is at. So if I go into settings down here at the lower right, you'll see that this is my current server, and I can have one or more servers because it may be like, for instance, in this case, I have a server which is my Alpha software demos, another one that I did recently. Now the idea behind these pieces is that in here, if we edit that, all it really is a URL to a location. Now in this case, you'll notice that I'm actually, this server happens to be on Amazon. So Alpha is using an Amazon AWS S3 bucket, and I'll show you that in a moment, to store these. So it's not actually on the server, it's up on Amazon from that standpoint. But you can also look that if I edit this here, you can, that one also is there. Let's see if I have another one. Let me see an old one here. Yeah, you could also have your own server. So you don't have to use S3. You can actually deploy it to your own server from that standpoint. But the idea is that you're basically putting in the address of this server so that when AlphaLaunch goes and looks at it. So now if I go back to my app, I've set my server. When I click Manage Add, and then down below I click the Add button, you'll see that there was a little sign. It called my location and pulled down a list of the apps that are available. And you'll notice in this case that it already knows I have this installed, so it's called reinstall. So when I want to reinstall that, from that standpoint, I can just click reinstall, and in that case it would update it. If I had not installed it, it would do it. Now what's kind of nice about AlphaLaunch is there's some little nice features built into it. For instance, it knows what version you are on the local, but it also knows what your version is. So when you publish an AlphaLaunch app to your server to be downloaded, you can give it a new version number so the person can understand what's a version. And one of the future versions of AlphaLaunch, we're actually going to have it where we can force refreshes of apps, meaning that when AlphaLaunch starts up, it's going to look at the server, see if there's any new versions, and then maybe auto update them for you. But that's kind of TBD. We're working through that from that standpoint here. Okay, so I've set up my server. Once I've set up my server, I can say add. It's going to call the server here and look for any items there. Then I'm going to go ahead and say reinstall it, and I'm going to say update. You'll notice that it's downloading a whole bunch of files, and it's downloading it from the server to my local app and the file system storage. So that's another thing, is I can get really big apps on here and put those on there. Now you'll notice that it's downloading these files individually. In our next version that's coming out pretty soon, that will actually be a single app that comes down. Now that I've done that, I can click on that, launch it, then I'm in here, I can do my things. As you notice, I can have images, I can do things such as annotations in images. So let's go ahead and show you like this. I can go in here, edit that. Let's say I want to do a little purple, okay? And then I can have a little purple line here. All these really cool features that Alpha has, and including all this is offline, so that's an important element there. And then it will sync up back to my databases and do all the things you need to do. The cool thing is all the skills to put these together you already know. It's really a matter of a new set of skills to how to package and deploy and set up your AlphaLaunch from there, which is what our training is going to go through. Pretty cool, and we'll go through the whole process in our training to show you how to do that from that standpoint here. Now, one thing that's really cool about that is, let me go ahead and change this here, and this is important for people who have, let's see, MacBook turn off there, is that if you are, and bear with me while I set this up, okay, bear with me as I go through this. Let me cast this here, okay. Now coming up on your screen is my Android tablet. So now I'm on my Android tablet. You'll notice that I have a launch here, so I can click launch. It opens up very much like you saw before, is that it's going to show a list of apps. Now if you'll notice, I don't have the Alpha apps in here. I just have a couple sample apps that I put together from that standpoint. Same concept, same wording. So I can go to settings. I can then set up any number of apps that are servers that I want to get access to. Then I can go to manage add. These are the list of items. I can click add. It's calling the server. Oh, I just brought that server down, so that's probably why. But I go to that server, and then it's same process. And then once I have that, I can then launch that app within it and do all the things I need to do within that app. Be able to handle it from that standpoint there. So it works identical to the one on the iOS system, meaning that I can go into a test app, it's going to launch that app, and then all the functionality I had before that I showed you before works exactly the same here. Now this hasn't synced, that's why this image, but I can go in and sync it, bring it down on this, and then I'll use as a standard Alpha now. Now there's an important feature, is that since I'm going to be running multiple apps, there's a special code we go through on showing how to exit an app, and what that exit will do is take you out of your current running app back into AlphaLaunch. So now I can exit out of that one. Now I can go back here, I can launch my next app. So as you can see, it's really powerful from the standpoint that you're able to make it very easy, I'll take that off, to deploy one or many apps. So if you have a small company that doesn't want to go through all the PhoneGap, they can use AlphaLaunch and then point to your server, download the apps, and they're ready to go. And as we go along, we're going to continue to improve this, make the download speeds faster, make it easier to publish, and the other pieces. Now I've got a few minutes left in my presentation, so I want to just show you how easy it is to deploy on this. But while I'm doing that, if you have any questions or I went over something too quick, make sure to put it into the question area and go from there. So I'm going to go into my Alpha environment. I have an app that has been created. So people who are new to Alpha, I'm in the Web Securities Control Panel. I build my app, put it together. Now you'll notice up here in the right-hand corner there's a little more button right here. If I click on that, you'll see that there is a menu item called AlphaLaunch. And AlphaLaunch is where I go to. So much like when I'm ready to go, I publish this app to my server. I don't actually do this in scenario. AlphaLaunch works a little differently, is it kind of does all the publishing for you. You still set up a publishing profile because you need to know where the server is to, you know, where it's going to go for AJAX callbacks and things like that. So you'll set that up, but then when you go to ready to deploy this to your server so that someone can download it into AlphaLaunch, you go into More, AlphaLaunch, Publish Apps to AlphaLaunch. And then it opens up this little screen right here. And I'm just going to go over this very quickly, but you select your primary apps. This is sort of like PhoneGap, your primary piece there. Then what you do is, let me edit that component. In here you can put the name of your app. a description of it, you can actually add icons. So when it shows up in the download section, like if someone says add, it's going to have an icon and a description, everything else. So you can completely update this, including your name and email and things like that. So it's all about once you have that app out in the field so they can see who that app is from, and the pieces go from there. Then we can deploy it to the server. So the first thing we say is, okay, what we want to do is we want to put in place, there's sort of two parts of it, and this is very, very important. And this we go into a lot of detail. The top part is where all of the files that need to go on your Alpha server that will interact with the app when it's in the field. So for instance, when the app in the field makes a callback to pull down a list of data for a list, or to make a callback, all those files need to be up on your server. You also, and in fact, if I didn't include this use Amazon S3, it would also put in this same location where those files are to download to the app or to the AlphaLaunch environment. But a new option is where I can deploy the regular app pieces to my server, i.e. the things that are going to respond to the apps in the field. But now what I can do is take and put on Amazon S3 my files that need to be downloaded, the app itself that's going to be downloaded into AlphaLaunch, we put on there. And then all I click is OK. It's going to deploy the files it needs on our server, depending on which profile here. It's going to then compile and put together a set of files on Amazon S3 with that information. And that's all there is to it. So really, every time I need to modify this, I go ahead and just make a change. So I'd go in and make maybe change on my app here using my normal methodology. You'll notice that we just have lists, detail view controls, things like capture image, annotate, etc. But then when I'm ready to go, instead of publishing it to my server, what I do is I say, I don't have to go through PhoneGap, I just say AlphaLaunch, publish apps into AlphaLaunch. It probably is already selected. I say publish apps to launch AlphaLaunch, and what that will do is it will then put the information I need on my server, also put together a list of files, and the person out in the field. And what's also very cool is that, let me go ahead and show, let's see, it's this one, show the QR code. What's really cool is that we'll actually even generate the QR code where you can send this to someone, they can open AlphaLaunch. In fact, let me show you that. Hold on while I do this real quick. To make it easier for your folks to do things, instead of having to give them a whole bunch of long URLs and things like that, I'll go here, we'll go ahead and go out of here, okay. What you can do is if you go to settings here and then click scan, what scan will do, and you'll kind of see it brings up a barcode scanner that you can scan that QR code, and it will literally set up their way of downloading it from your server. So you don't have to type anything in. You just tell them go to settings, go to first thing you do is go to settings, go to the server web address, click scan. Then once they've scanned that, then everything is set up for them and all is selected, and then they just have to click manage add, click add, and it will download your app, and you don't have to do any other setup for there. So it makes it really easy. You can just email this this to the person, they can zap it in there, it downloads it, and in fact, this will create an instruction page where you can actually just email this whole thing, and it literally tells them, you know, here's a link to that instruction page, give them that link, and it will literally talk them through how to install it on their app. So for your testers or your first-time people, you can do that. So that's kind of a quick and dirty overview. I want to turn it back for some questions and our regular Q&A, but that is AlphaLaunch, and it's really a cool program. It has been enhanced significantly for release. We can use Amazon S3, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are in the development queue to improve the performance, add more PhoneGap plugins, do all of other things. But I'll tell you, once you start using AlphaLaunch, and our training is going to help you get the best of that and be able to do it very quickly, you'll know the muscle memory. You're going to like it because it's like the time from, hey, I got this cool little app, I'm going to whip it up, send it over to someone is like short because you don't have to go through all the build. You don't have to worry about, oh, what's their phone ID so that like on iOS, I have to register in that my certificate, blah, 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 blah. It really simplifies your life a lot. So check it out. It's in I think it's the AlphaLaunch came out in the, I think Sarah can correct me, but 4.4.3 I think is when it came out, and it's got a few enhancements from there and a few other things that are coming, so we can do that from there. And there's some great documentation. If you have questions about this, you can always go to Help, Open Documentation, and Sarah's actually done a phenomenal job on this. Go to our search area here, type in AlphaLaunch, and this will talk the development environment. It actually goes through all the things of, the basic steps. So, you can get a little pretty along with that from that standpoint, and it talks about different pieces and things like that. No, first launch. I'm sorry, that's not the one we want. We want AlphaLaunch. Bear with me. That's when you first get there. AlphaLaunch. I think it's all one word is what it does. Yeah, here's AlphaLaunch. And so it talks a bit about there, and then we'll be doing. So I'm sorry, it's 4.4. Oh, it requires 4.4.4 plus. So that's an important thing, and I don't know if we really illustrated that, but we can. Sarah is driving an incredible amount of work in our development environment, or our documentation environment. And one of the cool things we're doing, or what they're doing, excuse me, is for any feature that requires a certain version level, we're making sure to denote that. So you can make sure, well, why doesn't, like for instance, the S3 stuff was just added in 4.4.5, meaning that if you had 4.4.4, you couldn't publish to S3. Now you could. So they're being really good about adding that, so you can tell which release you need to be on to be able to use these fun features. So little plug for them. But there's some documentation there. And again, we have a fabulous training course coming up, certification on this, plus also we're going to be covering it at the DevCon. So multiple ways for us, because we really think this is a huge benefit to take it from idea to actually in the hands of your users in as few steps as possible. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Dave, open it up for him.
That's great. We do have some AlphaLaunch questions, and we do have some documentation questions. So I'd like to actually start with a documentation question. Yeah. And it's Sarah, if you are there, if you could take yourself on mute and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Much more interesting than me. So
right. Okay. And so let me just say, here's the question that we got earlier. And they said, look, the videos are great, but is there a way to get written, detailed documentation as opposed to training videos? Videos may be super, but they're a cold medium, and they have poorer knowledge acquisition and retention than text. And man, I believe that too. I mean, sometimes I like seeing stuff in video, but I really like printed documentation. And also, it's not quite as easily searchable. So for people who are brand new to our documentation, could you do just like a 1-minute overview as to what you can find there, how you can find it, and what you should do if you can't find what you're looking for in our written documentation?
Oh, sure.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. And do you mind if I make you the presenter so you could take us to the documentation system?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me pull it up. The one that's online. It might crash. My connection might crash because I'm running on got some storms in the area, and I'm running on a very low-powered connection.
So there's an element of danger, is what you're saying. Excellent.
Yes.
All right, good.
All right. So yes, videos are great, and I wholeheartedly agree that they're not a good medium for searching or getting that code example out easily, since you can't copy and paste a screenshot into a text editor. But this is our Alpha Anywhere documentation system is growing, working very hard to try to fill in a lot of missing gaps and to make it better and turn into the thing that everybody deserves with this product. And if you go to documentation.alphasoftware.com or click on the documentation link in Alpha Anywhere under the help menu, there's this open documentation button that will take you to this website. And here you can search for things that you are trying to do. We're trying to convert all of our, not convert the videos into written examples, but get them in here with some text and pulling out that sample code that we've written so that it's easier to access and find. But in here you'll find great stuff like in our user's guide and the AlphaLaunch that Dion was showing you earlier. There's these explanations on how to install. They're all written with examples, screenshots, links to relevant videos if they're relevant. And if you use our search tool to find things, you should be able to find most stuff in here. If you can't find something, you need to tell us, and at the bottom of every single page, there's this
Please
report an
tell
issue with
us.
this page
Yeah.
link. Please tell us if you can't find something. Please tell us if you search for something and couldn't find it, but know it's in here. You can click on this link and it will open your email, and you can tell us what you were looking for, any issues with the page itself.
And this does not bring you into some black hole. Well, when you type
No.
something to report an issue with this page, at least 3,
No.
sometimes 4 people are looking at that exact issue. Often you'll get an answer within an hour, especially if it's a work day. You'll get an answer very quickly to, oh, try looking over here, or if it's not documented, we'll actually go find out the answer from the developer for you and then document it, which is just super duper real-time documentation. So really, if you've got any sort of written documentation needs, by all means, please, we'd love your feedback.
Absolutely, yeah. We want to make this better. We don't want people to be stuck, and we're certain that if you have a question on how to do something, a bunch of other people probably have the same question. So definitely tell us, and we'll address that for you.
Awesome. So back to some AlphaLaunch questions. A couple people have asked, because you said it's not branded, Dion, can it be branded? And the answer to that is yes. Our professional services team today, because we're the owners of the source code for AlphaLaunch, but we can actually brand that for your company or organization. So if you want to have, say your company is Acme, if you want to have your own Acme Launch app, we can help you get that up into the Google Play Store, or sorry, either the Google Play Store or Alpha iOS store, or we can help you get set up in a private store as well, which is a possibility. They make corporate internet types of stores. And we can get that all branded. And then whenever you want to create a new application, it will just appear. They just need to download that one AlphaLaunch thing to their phone, and it could be completely branded with your logo, your name, and throughout. It doesn't have to say Alpha anything. And if you're interested in doing that, please get in touch with our professional services group. Probably the easiest way to do that is to send an email to sales@alphasoftware.com and tell them that you're interested in branding AlphaLaunch, and they'll tell you what's involved and how much it costs and all that. So
that I sort of wanted to mention that information is in our documentation as well for AlphaLaunch.
Oh,
there's a link to we have a page you can request.
Oh, fantastic.
Request your own branded one.
Oh,
or,
there's even like a form. That's perfect.
Yep,
well, then
there's
you
a
don't
form.
have to send an email. Just fill out the form. Exactly.
I'll put a link to this in the chat window.
Great. And let me look through. We have some general questions, but we do have a few more AlphaLaunch questions. So I'd like to get to those first. Here's one. Can AlphaLaunch work in conjunction with the normal PhoneGap installed applications with IIS?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, how do they, in conjunction, I'd be curious. They can both access the same back-end server environment. So let's say you had a PhoneGap app that just did data collection, and then you said, oh, I'm just going to put out an AlphaLaunch that does like JavaScript charts or something like that. But they can both connect to the back-end database. They can both leverage the same security system. So you'll notice when I did a download of AlphaLaunch, on that server, there's no security at this point for downloading the app. But once the app's down, you can then have security inside that that uses all of our normal security paradigms to then lock down that app. So even if someone brought down the app, they can't necessarily use it. On our roadmap is the ability to secure that download capability. So you literally have to put in a password before you can even download apps from an alpha server, and that's kind of down the road as we find people's requirements for that come out. But in the meantime, you can use all that. So yes, you could have a PhoneGap built app sitting right next to a AlphaLaunch app on the same one, and that's where I think a real cool area to look into this is just testing. If you just want to spin something up and get it in the hands of someone, you don't have to go through all the PhoneGap stuff. Even yourself, you can publish it and then download it in AlphaLaunch on your own device. So it's kind of it's sort of very similar to our PhoneGap shell on steroids kind of scenario. But I think the more important thing is that when you're dealing with other people, you don't know what kind of phone they have, etc. But they can download these things from the app stores, and then you can just give them that QR code, and then boom, they can be using and giving you feedback there. Now, as far as the two apps communicating together, not really sure on that. I haven't done any experiments with app-to-app communication on the same one, but I'm sure with PhoneGap there may be a way. But just remember, there's a certain set of PhoneGap app or plugins that are in AlphaLaunch, and so if it's not in there, you may be limited a bit there. But maybe through Bluetooth or something. I don't know. That's actually external, so that's the best I can think about it. But definitely you can have side-by-side apps running on the same machine connecting to the back-end server environment.
Excellent. Another question is, well, let's talk about sort of access control. Someone said, how are the apps implemented from an access control standpoint? For example, is there corporate single sign-on? Is there VPN? And what kind of authentication is supported? Protocols, tokens, things like that. And right now, nothing out of the box, but again, our professional services team can implement it any way you wish to. So, of course, virtual private network is supported out of the box. That's not a big thing. But if you wanted it to tie into your particular corporate single sign-on so that you maybe have only access to apps, or if you want to do it on a role-based system where, say, people in your accounting department are allowed to access your accounting apps once they've entered in the proper username and password, whereas people in the sales department are only getting the sales apps, or the service department just gets service apps. We can do that as well. We do support really any types of encryption that you can imagine, including encryption directly onto the device itself, and you can add in the ability to auto-wipe the device if you want to. Again, that's an additional thing to add, but it's something that we can certainly work with you, our professional services team could do. But some more out-of-the-box features will be coming with regards to access control and roles, but today it can be done with a little bit of custom programming. So I hope that answers that question. Let me see what else. Okay. Just a quick question. Can you have two apps running at the same time?
No. What each one is sort of like a launch an app, use it, and then exit out, and then enter the other one. So yeah, really, you don't like have hop swapping between apps at this point. But a great idea. I mean, sort of a fast launch instead of having to get out of one app and into the other. But what's kind of cool is that we can use what's called persistent login. In fact, in the latest version of Alpha, there's an enhanced version of that. It's a template, so if you build your app around that there, what you can do is the person go in AlphaLaunch, then download and go into the app A, and then log into that app, because you'll want to have that secure. And then once they exit back up to the app, to the AlphaLaunch, they could download a second one, go in there. But then when they went back up and in the second, or back into your original app, what will happen is, since it's a persistent login, it's going to say, oh, you already logged in. Oh, you're good. Okay, come on in here, because it can use everything. You need a PhoneGap environment for persistent login to work, and it just works. So that way, you still have that exit out and then go back in, but when you go back in, it's not going to force you to log back on. So that may be a way to handle that there. As far as hot swapping, that would be really cool. I think a feature we'll have to put on our request to our developers of saying, like, I've got 3 apps and I want to be able to just, swap between them, but I'm not sure how Alpha, the launch product is set up. So it's not doable now, but definitely something in the future that you could, that I think we can see about getting on the roadmap.
Excellent. So let's start again from the top of the list of questions. We'll go from the were asked first. This one said, how do I prevent the keyboard from Android or iOS from automatically opening when a date time control or a text box gets focus? Is it possible to do that?
Ooh, Chris isn't on with us today. Of course, the one day he's not on. I honestly don't have the answer for that.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. He may be. We'll see. Chris might have the answer for this question, and if so, I'm gonna move him.
Yeah, he's just been doing so much more PhoneGap and more of that work than I have.
Now, I know the spin box control for date time, I don't believe that brings up the keyboard if you're using the spin box control, but a text box, yeah, how would you force that? Well, so we'll either get the answer for Chris here in a minute, or if you want to send an email to guides, we'll go and talk to our folks here and find out what the answer is to that.
Great question, though. Love it, love it, love it.
Here's a cool kind of a little, here's a person who's looking for an example. It's actually a pretty common case example. They'd like an A5W page to be set up to receive some JSON data from a third party, so I guess it doesn't submit.
So
And
essentially
then
like a web API.
Exactly. And then what he would like to do is write some Xbasic to update his database.
Okay.
What sort of
I can actually give you an idea of what that looks like.
Fantastic. And let me make sure that you're still the presenter, not Sarah. Okay, make presenter. Okay.
Okay.
You're a presenter. And before we go any further, let me just interrupt you for a second. We got a quick text message back from Chris. He said, if you make these fields read-only fields, and then like put a click event on it or something like that, making them read-only as labels as opposed to as text fields, should stop the keyboard from appearing. That's our answer to that question.
All right, cool. Okay. Now we're going to use something called, very important, the request object. So let me go ahead and go into the Alpha environment. I will now go into my demonstration database. And this is a little slower because I'm on my, my virtual machine here, but go ahead and click New. Then I'm going to create an A5W page. And again, this is running a little slower than it normally does. You would see better performance, but I'm running it on a, there. Okay. So in here, this is just an A5W page. So I could type in some HTML. I could use the, this is what you see is what you get. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert Xbasic here. And I'm going to say dim incoming JSON as C. And then I'm going to go incoming JSON dot is equal to request dot body, and then I'm just going to click OK. But then after I do that, you'll notice it's kind of blocked. But if I just go into my source here, oh, did it overwrite that? Oh yeah, because I'm in there. Egads. Okay, I'm going to go to source. I'm going to delete everything out of here. So this is a standard it would just be like an HTML page. But I'm going to insert my Xbasic here. Incoming JSON as C. Incoming JSON is equal to request.body. Okay. Okay, so you'll see that basically what we have here is this is an A5W page. So we'll go incoming JSON. So this is called an A5W tag. So what happens is when this page is called, it will process, Alpha will process that page, spitting, like, so if I said, you know, hi there, it's just going to spit this out as HTML. But then when it sees this tag right here, anything in here is going to be run as a as Xbasic. And then when I want to spit something out, I can say, you know, I can use the question mark, the JSON is, and I'm going to see if this works, plus incoming JSON. So this is just script. So you would just create this script. Now, obviously what, and I'm going to come back and confirm this works properly, but what I'm going to do is this, is check this out, is that I could then go in here, go to my, oh, I don't have my code library on this new version here, but then I could use my standard database scripting to take this incoming JSON and process it. So I can use any regular kind of SBake there. But here's the important thing. When this page runs, and let's go ahead and, I'm going to give this a try. Let me do something real quick, everybody. Again, this environment is not fully set up properly, but we'll go target folder demonstration. Okay. So and oh, I want to do, there's like a query, okay, dot JSON. I'm going to see if this works. I'm make sure this is done right there. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do a quick run this in the flow there. Okay, it's already doing that. Live preview. Okay. So you'll notice something when I go ahead and do this here. Okay, so you'll notice in here that I've got an error. So basically what happens, it started to run this, but it ran into an error. So request.variable sub-element is not found. So let me go back in here. I think it's maybe variables. Let me just go here, publish, and like go ahead and do this here. Okay, come on, let's go. It's a little slow. Okay. See if I did that properly. Okay. Oh, what happened? Oh. Might help if it stayed open. Bear with me. And again, I apologize. I've been preparing this was set up for the AlphaLaunch stuff, so it's using a pre-release, latest pre-release that I was playing with, but let me reopen this here and get this published out. So, but the basic concept is you read the request. Now, there's two ways to handle it. There's a get where you can use like a request variable, and I want to show that one. And then also if you're posting to the page, then what you can do is in the body, you can take the request.body and grab that. So I'll show you that in a moment once this gets set up and running here. I do want to see part of it running, and then we'll go from there. And if worse comes to worse, I'll go ahead and get this running, and then we'll do it as a follow-on here. And here we go. Bear with me. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to 5 pages. I'm going to publish this one real quick. It's going to publish it out to local web root. Okay, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, yeah, it's not seeing that root. So let me go ahead and edit this real quick. Okay. I'm just going to comment this out real quick. So I want to show you kind of how this works. Okay, so the hi there is in there. Oh, I published the wrong one. Man, I'm having this thing slow. I might need to pun on this, but let's see. I want to actually go here. Okay, so we have HTML up there in the script here. So now when I run this one, hopefully, oh, that was live preview, that's why.
Nothing like a live seat of your pants demo.
I know, I'm rusty. This usually goes a little smoother, but it's because I'm on this.
Usually the master of
Okay,
these things.
so you'll notice that this
There we go.
is spit HTML, but this is actually inside the Xbasic scripting. So what I'm going to actually do is pass in a JSON equals hello. Okay, so in this case, this is called a request variable. So I can have, and you'll see them in a whole bunch of other systems there. So what you're doing is you're appending your data right after this question mark with a thing. So I'm going to see if I can get that work correctly now. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. So I'm going to say request.variables.json, and then we'll get rid of this and try there. I'll have to check my request.variables.json, make sure that's right. Okay, so I'm going to publish that back to my local drive. Okay, and I'm going to go back in here, do a refresh, and we'll go incoming JSON equause hello.
Incoming JSON or simply JSON? Is that the name of the...
what did see, I looked in my... you're right, that's called JSON, excuse me.
There we go. I'm almost earning my keep here today.
There you go. Okay, so it didn't like that. it didn't give me the error, but it didn't give me that. So, and I just have to make sure I've got my request variables set up correctly. So, okay, it's request variables, a dot variable containing all variables, the combination of get variable, post variables, and cookies. So that's what we want to use, is this request dot variables. And I believe we just put the
you
new...
forgot a question mark on line 8.
Oh, egats. And actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go BR. Oh, man.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. This is that extreme programming where one guy looks over the other shoulder and says when he's screwing up. Okay, check that out. Okay, so this is really important. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. Here's how it works. This is the URL to my page. So you create your page and you publish it to your server. Now, the method I'm using here is called a request variable. So you'll notice that the request variable consists of a name equals and then the content. So if I wanted to, I could put in my JSON right here, and then it would, when this page runs, what happens is that the system automatically sort of dissects that and grabs the JSON value. Then I can put that into a variable, and then in there I could put it into a database or things like that. Now, for JSON type objects, most likely what you're going to do is not a GET request, is you're going to want to do what's called a POST request. And that's probably a little bit beyond our demo time today. And maybe we can touch on that in a very future one. But basically, there's two ways that you can access an HTTP. I think there's more than that, but there's a GET one, which is sort of this method where I say get this page here, and I'm going to give it some of these variables that go after it to help me do it. The other method is you can post to it, and when you post to it, what happens is you actually are sending essentially a whole web page to that site, and in the body of the web page you can put a whole bunch of data. And again, I apologize we don't have a little more time to go over that, but you definitely want to look at using a post transaction, because the idea then is that instead of a variable, what you can do is you can say incoming JSON is equal to request.body, and then everything in the body of that page that was sent there gets extracted. So that's really good if you have a lot more data, because again, by putting in the variables, you have to be careful it doesn't screw up, the HTTP transaction. So usually the norm is, if you look at REST interfaces, what are going on is people are putting things in the body of the page that's going to be posted to the server. It extracts that from there. Now, there's one other thing that's really, really cool, is that when you do the post transaction, you can also get what are called headers. So a post transaction includes headers and also, let's see if I can find header in here. So what you can do is a header in a post transaction is sort of like metadata. And what you can do is you can put, like, for instance, a secret code in the header. And you can say header secret code equals, whatever it is. And then in your script, you can then say, secret code is equal to request dot, it's actually a function, I believe. It's a request dot get header, and then you put in there secret. I don't know if this is exactly right, but the idea is that this one would get the header for secret code, and then what you can do is compare that code and make sure that it's correct before you actually process the data. And that's kind of how simple authentication works with it there. So now, once I have it in here, the rest is plain vanilla. So I can dim my connection, I can dim my connection string, I can create a little SQL update call, and then pass it this incoming JSON, either by parsing it or just putting that JSON right into a database. But the heart of this is that you create an A5W page. That A5W page has this scripting in it. In there you use the request object to either get like a variable if you're using a GET operation, or if you're using a POST operation, you can get a set of the body and the headers. And then once that data comes out of there, then the rest is as if you were writing a script in Xbasic, kind of thing, same thing there. And so we are going to be doing classes on writing web services with Alpha. We have a whole bunch of new features coming down the road, but it's going to be a little ways away. But this is the current method. And what you want to do is go to the request object, and check that out. Now, very important is that it is because we're moving towards IIS and other pieces, you can also use something called the context object, which does essentially something very similar to it. But check this out, and if there's going to be any changes, they're actually highlighted right here, and we'll explain it there. But I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it into our there. So I hope that gives you enough to be dangerous. I apologize if it wasn't super smooth, but we did get it to work where it actually goes in, grabs the information out of the request variable, and now I can use that within my script inside Xbasic.
That's great. We are out of time, but I would like to add one thing because someone asked, how can you use this method but sanitize the input to avoid unwanted injection? And I wanted to bring that up because it's a really, really important point. SQL injection is a big danger when you allow a system to be open like that, where you're inserting data that may actually itself have malicious SQL code. The answer to that is that you want to use arguments. We can bring that up in a different session. If you've got questions about using arguments, it's definitely well documented in documentation.alphasoftware.com. But again, if you can't find what you're looking for, do click on that link and we will help you find further information. So Dion, thank you very much for presenting. Sarah, thank you very much. Chris, thanks for standing by and answering questions. And thanks to all of you who came, attended, asked questions, and show up here with us every week. Hope to see you next week. Have a great day. Goodbye.